We're all used to seeing pro runners with their smooth running form, but how does a 2:24 marathon runner like Ben here change his technique to remain light and efficient across different running paces? And what will happen to his running technique when he tries to keep up with the late Kelvin Kiptum's marathon world record pace? You might recognise Ben from the awesome Ben is Running channel here on YouTube. Today I want to analyse a few aspects of his running form in detail to learn how he maintains such good form across different paces. Okay, so I've teed this up so we've got a comparison view. We've got on the left-hand side 4-hour marathon pace. On the right-hand side, we've got Ben running at 2.5-hour marathon pace. So 9:09 per mile versus 5:43 per mile. Two very different paces, and we can see how this translates straight away into two fairly different running styles. Now, we're going to look at foot strike in a second, but let's start out actually looking at what happens when it comes to his stride length. So stride length being the other factor that's really important when it comes to being able to obviously dictate the pace that you're running. Cadence and stride length together determine how fast you are going to run. So how much ground are you covering with each stride and how many times per minute. Now, one of the things that tells us whether a runner is going to be able to maintain the stride length that he's currently trying to achieve without overstriding is whether at this point at what we call terminal stance, so the point where the foot's just leaving the ground, as we hit that point, are we seeing this parallel line sign? Okay, parallel lines or even tighter than parallel lines. What we don't want to see is this forward line forwards or parallel, which means that we're starting to see the foot then come too far ahead of the body and set up to begin to overstride. So if Ben was here, for example, with the shin, then we'd see the beginnings of an overstride starting to open up. Now, we're not seeing that. We're seeing that, as I always say, the parallel line sign is independent of pace. So regardless if you're running fast or in Ben's case, a 4-hour marathon pace, running slow, good running form starts with getting this position nailed down. Now, this position is a function of stride angle. Now, stride angle really is all about the difference between what we see with the lead leg and the rear leg, angles-wise, at the hip, again, at this point of peak hip extension. So, just position the hip marker. There we go. Versus what we can see on this side. Okay, so when we're talking, let's position the hip marker. When we're talking about stride angle, we can see at this 4-hour marathon pace, 45-degree hip stride angle. At the faster pace, opening out more, 65 degrees. Ben's managing to get his stride length by creating more separation between lead leg and trailing leg. And through getting that separation, that hip extension driving back behind him, and that knee drive coming forwards, the hip flexion, it means he's able to cover the ground without having to flick that lower leg out in front and set up for an overstride. And this really is key. This is so important when it comes to actually managing to maintain a good quality, smooth stride. Now let's clear this and let's just have a look quickly at what happens as we play through to see what happens at initial contact. Okay, so let's just do this one as well. So this is the closest frame we're going to get to when it comes to initial contact. This is what I'm saying, where I don't want to see an overstride, and we're not seeing an overstride here. We want to see ankle landing underneath flexing knee. As Ben strikes the ground, that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing him land with what I'd describe as a midfoot strike here. There's a fair bit of midsole in the shoe that he's wearing, so it may look like he's beginning to heel strike, perhaps, but trust me, very much a midfoot strike. And on this side as well, again, exactly what we're seeing. But we are seeing a big difference in what happens with this trail leg. Again, the degree to which he kicks back and picks his foot up underneath him, kind of heel to butt, that, as I always describe when people ask me, particularly when they're trying to work on this, it has to be a factor of pace. Okay, the height to which you pick the foot up underneath you is all dependent on the pace you're running at. The faster you go, the higher this kickback. Okay, in fact, we can then look at that in comparison to faster pace still. If we flick forwards here, we go to marathon world record pace. Again, at this point of initial contact, you can see even still we're managing to get an even shorter lever. And that's how I describe it, as a shorter lever bends swinging through underneath him. The faster he runs, the more efficient it is to pick that foot up higher, so this swinging lever through underneath him, the swinging pendulum, becomes a shorter pendulum and is easy to tick-tock through. Now, part of that is going to be him using his hamstring muscles to pick the foot up underneath him. Okay, so using these hamstrings, using these hamstrings here to actively flex the knee and pick the foot up. But a big part of it as well is actually elastic recoil. We're going to talk about this in relation to Jakob Ingebrigtsen in a few videos' time. But at this point, with the hip extended, these hip flexors and quads are under a stretch. Okay, they're under tension. And as we release this stretch, the foot comes off the ground as it is here. We release this stretch. There's an elastic recoil that helps drive the knee forwards. And the centrifugal force around the knee joint here picks that foot up towards his butt. So he's not having to consciously think too hard about lift the foot, lift the foot, lift the foot. It is a function of speed, a function of velocity of the leg moving through underneath him. Okay, so we'll watch quickly Ben running at world record marathon pace. Again, we can see that he's managing to pick that foot up underneath through, again, a lot of that elastic recoil. We get into this position where there's a very high carriage of the foot as he comes through underneath him. He still manages to hit, if we get to here, tighter than that parallel line sign. So he really is compressed here, which for me is going to be hard for him to maintain. As soon as we start to get very far back behind what would be kind of parallel line here, we're getting closer to out and out sprinting, which again isn't lending itself well to a nice, smooth, sustainable, sustainable is the word really, running form. It is more like a hard effort over a short period of time, which clearly this is a lot faster than Ben's marathon pace. It makes sense that this would be more of a sprint that he'd be able to hold for, well, I don't know, Ben. How long? How long do you think you could maintain Kelvin Kiptum's marathon pace? He's then able to keep it compressed, not overstride, and land bang underneath, between these two frames, underneath that flexing knee. So it's all the stuff that we want to see. Now, there are some other things that Ben is really consistent with when it comes to his running form, regardless of pace. So we can see here, both at 4-hour pace and at world record pace, we've got a very, very similar arm swing. It's almost kind of carbon copy of the two different types of form. Okay, I'll let the video just play through. You see the arm swing's obviously happening at a different pace, but in terms of the actual mechanics of the arms, there's actually very little variation. Okay, we're in a position where he's staying shorter than 90 degrees. Okay, so again, working with that short pendulum with the hands, with the elbow, letting the hands stay relatively close to the rib cage, as we've mentioned before, and the effort is all going into driving back with the elbow, so extending at the shoulder. And what we see, if anything, in terms of the big difference, is the degree to which we get that extension at the shoulder. Driving back further goes hand in hand with opening out more at the hips. In fact, the drive back with the shoulder, the drive back, thinking about driving back with the point of the elbow, extending at the shoulder, really helps you to open out through what we refer to as the anterior oblique sling across the front of the torso. So really working through muscles like your obliques, for example, to help improve the quality of the width through of this trailing leg as it comes through swing. Okay, if we drive back with the elbow, we lengthen these muscles across the front of the torso, as we're also lengthening through the hip flexors here. As the next few frames progress, that's where the leg will benefit from the elastic recoil that pings it through onto the next stride. Now, as we're running faster, we need to get that drive more dramatic, more powerful, Obviously, as we're running at a slower pace, as here on the left, that drive back is not going to be anywhere near as powerful or as big in terms of the arc of motion. There's a slight difference between what we see here and what we see here. Okay, now, when it comes to stride length and learning to maintain an appropriate stride length, open out your stride for the given pace that you're trying to run without overstriding, I've actually put together a little free training resource, a little pack that you can download and use some exercises and extra resources to help you actually master this aspect of your running form. So you can grab that from the link down in the description. Now, I want to say a quick thanks to Ben for letting me use him as a guinea pig for this video. As I record this, his channel is on 99.9 thousand subscribers, so perhaps head on over there and push him over the line to hit 100k. Next up, click the video on screen to see an analysis of a runner who needs to work on improving the drive from the hips, opening out those hip flexors to get a better stride angle and improve his running form.